His lips were a brand, a claim, a declaration of war against the silent fortress I had built around my heart. They crashed against mine, not with tenderness, but with a fierce, possessive heat that stole the air from my lungs and set my blood on fire. My mind screamed in protest, a chorus of old fears and fresh panic, but my body, that traitorous vessel, betrayed me completely. My fingers, which should have been pushing him away, curled into the fabric of his shirt, clinging to him as if he were the only anchor in a storm-tossed sea. How did I get here? How did a ghost like me end up in the arms of a king? It had all started in the one place I both loved and loathed, the park. I held a profound dislike for the park, a sentiment that had nothing to do with its aesthetic appeal. Soul City Park was, by all accounts, a masterpiece. It stood as a verdant, meticulously ordered rebellion against the oppressive weight of the steel and glass behemoths that clawed at the sky. On that particular day, the cherry blossom trees were bowing under the weight of their own beauty, their delicate petals cascading down like a flurry of pink snow. They clung to the damp stone paths, a lingering reminder of a recent, gentle drizzle. The air was filled with the mundane poetry of life, couples walking hand in hand, their fingers intertwined, joggers lost in the rhythm of their music, their wireless earphones a silent barrier to the world, the unrestrained, joyous shrieks of children soaring on the swings. But for me, this symphony of life was a cacophony. It was too vibrant, too resonant with a happiness I could no longer access. The laughter, especially, was a sound from a foreign land. Ever since the accident that had stolen my mother and sister, the sound of joy had become a physical torment. Whenever it managed to slip past my defenses and into my ears, a sharp, searing pain would lance through my chest, as if I were inhaling shards of broken glass. And yet, despite the agony, I returned to this place every single day. It was not a pilgrimage of desire, but one of necessity. I needed the air, the movement, the stark reminder that even though my world had crumbled, the larger one had stubbornly continued to spin. I was still here, a reluctant survivor, even on the days I desperately wished I wasn't. On that fateful afternoon, my hands were jammed deep into the pockets of my oversized hoodie, a garment chosen more for its ability to obscure than for its comfort. My dark hair was a deliberate mess, a curtain of black bangs that fell across my face, shielding me from unwanted scrutiny. A mask was pulled low over my mouth and nose, a final layer of anonymity. I craved invisibility. I had always craved it. In this society, the word Omega was not a designation. It was a brand. It marked me as prey. I was prey to the alphas, who interpreted my naturally calm voice and gentle demeanor as an invitation to dominate, to conquer. I was prey to the betas, who viewed omegas as little more than decorative objects, existing solely for their pleasure and convenience. I had once been pathetically submissive, a doormat who allowed himself to be used and discarded, believing that was all he was worth. But that version of Jangwook, the broken, pleading boy, was gone. He was dead and buried. Or at least, that's the lie I repeated to myself each morning, a mantra against the ghosts of my past. Caught you. The small, bright voice sliced through my somber reflections. A pair of tiny fingers latched onto the hem of my hoodie, tugging with a surprising, tenacious strength. My entire body went rigid. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. Slowly, I tilted my head down. A little boy, no older than 6 or 7, was beaming up at me. His cheeks were round and flushed from exertion, His brown eyes were wide and luminous with triumph, and his soft black hair curled playfully at the edges. His small sneakers were scuffed and worn, clear evidence of a life filled with play, and his jacket was zipped up crookedly, a charming testament to his self-sufficiency. His grin was a masterpiece of childhood imperfection, a wide, triumphant smile that proudly displayed 2 missing front teeth. "Mommy, I caught you," he announced again, his voice a happy, breathless puff of air. My heart didn't just stop. It felt as if it had been ripped from my chest. "Mommy." For a paralyzing second, my tongue felt welded to the roof of my mouth. In our world, stratified by secondary genders, the word mommy was not a casual term. It was a deeply ingrained, instinctual identifier used by pups, both male and female, for the omega parent who nurtured them. It was a word tied inextricably to scent, to comfort, to the very essence of home. But I was no one's mommy. I was a barren tree in a forest of life. I managed to open my mouth, my mind scrambling to find the right words to gently correct the child's mistake. But before I could form a single syllable, I heard it. Minhee. That voice. It wasn't just a sound. It was a physical event. It rolled across the park like a wave of distant thunder, deep, resonant, and imbued with an undeniable authority. It was the kind of voice that bypassed conscious thought and spoke directly to the most primal instincts of my omega nature, making every nerve ending stand at attention. My pulse, which had been a steady, mournful drum, suddenly hammered against my throat. I hadn't even turned around yet, but I already knew. The little boy, Minhee, lit up like a starburst. "Daddy!" I turned, and the world tilted on its axis. My knees threatened to give way beneath me. There he was, Alpha Sunsuk. His name was a legend, a whispered cautionary tale in boardrooms and back alleys alike. He wasn't just an alpha. He was the pack alpha, a man whose influence was a sprawling web that entangled half of Seoul's legitimate businesses and its shadowy underworld. Power didn't just follow him. It emanated from him like a palpable aura. Fear was his constant companion. And now that man stood just a few feet away, a towering figure whose broad-shouldered presence seemed to make the very air around us crackle with energy. His dark, impeccably tailored suit fit his tall, powerful frame like a second skin. His tie was loosened just enough to hint at a raw, untamable danger lurking beneath the veneer of civilization. His black hair was styled with precision, though a few rebellious strands at his temples suggested a man who disdained trivialities. His jawline was sharp enough to cut glass. His lips were set in a firm, unyielding line, and his eyes, dear God, his eyes. They were the color of polished onyx, yet they held a molten, predatory glow as they locked onto me. I was paralyzed, a deer caught in the headlights of an oncoming freight train. What was a man of his stature doing in a public park? Why was his son clinging to my hoodie as if I were his lifeline? Why did the solid ground beneath my feet suddenly feel like quicksand? "Daddy," Minhee chirped again, his grip on my hoodie unwavering. I found Mommy. A scream built in my throat, a desperate urge to shout that I wasn't his mother, that it was all a terrible mistake, that he needed to let go of me before the monster in the designer suit closed the distance between us. But the sound died before it was born, strangled by a paralyzing fear. Alpha Sunsuk's gaze swept over me, a slow, deliberate assessment that started with my disheveled hair and ended on my trembling hands. He studied me not as a person, but as a curiosity, a piece of prey caught in a trap he hadn't even set. And yet, beneath the cold appraisal, there was something else in his eyes, something that chilled me even more than fear. It was a look of raw, undiluted possession. If there was one thing I despised above all else, it was being watched, being scrutinized. But Alpha Sunsuck's gaze did more than just watch. It felt like it was stripping me bare, peeling back the layers of my carefully constructed defenses to expose the terrified Omega cowering within. I tried to take a step back, to create some distance, but Minhee's small hand held firm, his fingers bunching the fabric of my hoodie, as if he feared I might dematerialize. "Daddy," Mommy looked shy. The boy giggled, his eyes darting between us. "See? She's blushing." I wasn't blushing. At least, that's the frantic lie I told myself. The heat flooding my face was from the afternoon sun, not from the searing intensity of this terrifying alpha stare, which made me feel like the last oasis in a vast, dying desert. "Let go," I whispered, my voice barely audible as I looked down at Minhee. I tried to inject a note of gentleness into the words. "You've made a mistake, little one." "No mistake." That voice again. It was low, rough, and carried the weight of absolute finality. My head snapped up. Sunsuk was closer now. How had he moved so silently, so quickly? The space between us had vanished in the blink of an eye. His scent, a potent and intoxicating blend of dark cedarwood and approaching storm, enveloped me like a thick fog, undeniably alpha. My knees went weak, my carefully constructed composure crumbling to dust. My throat was sandpaper. "I'm not his mother. You should take him." A ghost of a smile touched Sunsuck's lips, but it held no warmth, no humor. It was something far darker, hungrier. "He called you Mommy. He has never called anyone that before. That doesn't mean, it means you belong." The words were not a suggestion. They were a verdict. They slammed into me with the force of a physical blow. Belong? No, I belonged nowhere. Not with him. Not with anyone. I was a solitary island, eroded by a lifetime of storms. Yet, for all my internal screaming, I couldn't tear my gaze away from his. My Omega instincts, the part of me I had tried so hard to suppress, were howling at me to bow my head, to submit, to show deference. But I resisted. I clenched my fists until my knuckles turned white and forced myself to stand a little straighter. "I don't even know you," I managed to say, the words a faint whisper against the pounding of my heart. "You will." The way he said it was not a question, not a hope, but a chilling promise. Minhee beamed up at me, his innocence a stark contrast to the predatory tension swirling around us. "See, Mommy?" Daddy said yes. "You're ours." Ours. The word made my head spin. I had to get away. I had to run, to put as much distance as possible between myself and this alpha who looked at me as if I were a foregone conclusion. But as I tried to take that crucial step back, Sunsuck's hand shot out. It was large, warm, and impossibly firm as it closed around my wrist. I froze instantly, the unexpected contact sending a cascade of sparks up my arm. The thudding in my ears grew deafening. His grip wasn't cruel or painful, but it was utterly inescapable, like the gentle but unyielding pressure of a wolf's jaw around its prey, strong enough to hold, but also a silent of the power that could be unleashed if I struggled. "You smell different," he murmured, his voice a low rumble that vibrated through my bones. He leaned closer, his breath a warm ghost against my cheek. Not like the Omegas who throw themselves at me, all cloying sweetness and desperation. Not like the ones who wear their strength like ill-fitting armor. "You smell like truth. I swallowed hard, a violent tremor running through my entire body. Let me go. His dark eyes seemed to intensify, the molten glow brightening. If I do, will you run? Yes. The word screamed through every fiber of my being. But it caught in my throat, silenced by the sight of Min-hee looking up at me with those wide, innocent brown eyes, still clutching my hoodie as if I were already an indispensable part of his world. I need to go, I whispered instead, the words feeling feeble and inadequate. Sun-suk studied my face for a long, agonizing moment, his expression unreadable. Then, slowly, deliberately, he released my wrist. But his gaze held me captive, clear that this freedom was merely a temporary reprieve. Tomorrow, he stated, his voice calm but as sharp as a surgeon's scalpel. Dinner. At my house. I blinked, my mind struggling to process the command. What? It is not a request. My lips parted in disbelief. You can't just... Daddy! Min-hee interrupted with a delighted laugh, tugging on my sleeve. Can Mommy come tonight instead? My heart nearly hammered its way out of my ribs. A slow, dangerous curve formed on Sun-suk's lips, something that was alarmingly close to a genuine smile. His hand brushed against mine, a deliberately slow and calculated touch that sent a jolt of pure heat racing up my arm and down my spine. Tonight, he corrected, his onyx eyes locked on mine. If hell had a front gate, I was certain I had just been personally escorted through it. The mansion was less a home and more a Gothic fortress, a structure that seemed to have been pulled from the pages of a dark fairy tale. Towering black steel gates, walls too high and smooth to even contemplate climbing, and stoic, unsmiling guards at the entrance all screamed of power and isolation. I had seen pictures of Alpha Sun-suk's estate in glossy gossip magazines and read hushed whispers about it on online forums. But standing before it in person was an entirely different, and far more intimidating experience. Min-hee, however, was a beacon of unaffected joy. He skipped happily beside me, his small hand wrapped tightly around mine, pulling me forward with an eagerness that I could not possibly share. Mommy, hurry, he chirped, his voice echoing slightly in the vast, paved driveway. Daddy cooked dinner. I blinked, momentarily distracted from my rising panic. Daddy cooked? The boy giggled, a sound like tiny bells. Okay, maybe the chef cooked. But Daddy watched. Under any other circumstances, I might have laughed. But my nerves were stretched to their breaking point. My chest was so tight it felt as though an iron band was constricting my lungs. Every Omega instinct I possessed was screaming at me. A relentless chorus of danger, danger, Alpha territory. And yet, despite the klaxons blaring in my head, I allowed the small boy to lead me inside. The foyer was breathtakingly enormous. A constellation of crystal chandeliers glittered high above, casting rainbows of light across the polished marble floors that stretched out beneath my worn sneakers. The walls were lined with paintings of wolves, not stylized or abstract, but hyper-realistic depictions of powerful, intelligent creatures. The entire space smelled faintly of expensive wood polish, old leather, and something else, something pervasive and inescapable. Alpha. Sun-suk was waiting for us at the end of the long hallway. He had shed his suit jacket, and the sleeves of his crisp white shirt were rolled up to his forearms, revealing the prominent veins that spoke of latent strength. In that moment, he looked less like a corporate titan and more like a primordial predator barely contained within a shell of human civility. "Welcome home," he said, The two simple words delivered with unnerving certainty. I froze in my tracks. This isn't my home. That dark, humorless smile returned. It will be. Minhee tugged me forward again, oblivious to the suffocating tension. Daddy, can mommy sit next to me at dinner? Sunsuk's intense gaze never left mine. Mommy will sit next to me. The air between us grew thick and heavy. A burning sensation started in my chest, as though the very oxygen I was breathing was saturated with his potent pheromones. I gritted my teeth, trying to quell the incessant trembling in my hands. At the massive dining table, Minhee was an endless stream of cheerful chatter. He enthusiastically shoved food onto my plate, pushed a glass of juice towards me, and at one point even attempted to spoon-feed me a mouthful of rice. An act so absurdly endearing that it made me sputter with a laugh I hadn't realized I was capable of. Sunsuk watched it all. He watched me. His eyes traced the curve of my lips when I laughed. They noted the way my hand trembled as I struggled to hold my chopsticks. They lingered on the small, faded scar near my wrist. He missed nothing. You're thinner than I expected, he murmured, his voice a low rumble in the sudden quiet after Minhee had run off to fetch a favorite toy. Do you eat properly? I stiffened, the fragile bubble of warmth bursting. That's none of your business. It is my business now, he countered, his voice steady and implacable. You are mine. The words were a jolt to my system, igniting a chaotic storm of anger, fear, and a bewildering confusion. Stop saying that. You don't know me. You have no idea what I've been through. His gaze softened, but only by a fraction. Then tell me. Let me know everything. I looked away, a lump forming in my throat. Couldn't. I wouldn't. I would not slice open my old wounds and bleed my scars for his inspection. Not when he could so easily use them as weapons against me, just as every alpha before him had. But before I could formulate a scathing reply, Sunsuk leaned across the vast expanse of the table, his hand brushing against mine. The contact was like a lit match to dry tinder. My breath hitched. My pulse went into overdrive, my body staging a full-scale mutiny against my will. His eyes darkened, as if he could smell my reaction on the air. You feel it, too, he said, his voice dropping to a soft, intimate whisper. Don't lie. I shook my head furiously, a silent, desperate denial. But when he leaned closer, so close that our lips were mere inches apart, I didn't pull back. I couldn't move. My mind was screaming at me to run, to flee, but my heart, my foolish, treacherous heart wanted to stay. Daddy! Minhee's voice shattered the charged moment. He came running back into the dining room, clutching a stuffed wolf in his small hands. I nearly jumped a foot out of my chair, scrambling back from Sunsuk, my face burning with a heat that had nothing to do with the room's temperature. The alpha let out a low chuckle, deep in his chest, a sound of smug satisfaction, as if he had just won a crucial victory. But the night was far from over. Much later, as I was attempting to make my escape, a voice from the shadows by the gate stopped me dead. Jangwook. I froze, every muscle in my body locking up. A man's face swam into focus from the darkness. He was older now, his features hardened by time, but he was unmistakable. The beta who had once used me. The one who had left me bleeding and broken, shattered in body and spirit all those years ago. My blood turned to ice in my veins. What was he doing here? And worse, why was he looking at me with that same predatory hunger, as if he had just rediscovered his favorite prey? Every muscle in my body seized. My lungs burned, as though I had forgotten the basic mechanics of breathing. The memories, long suppressed, came rushing back like shards of broken glass. The oppressive darkness of cheap rooms, the brutal grip of rough hands, the nauseating stench of sweat and cheap alcohol. Not again. Never again. Step back. Sunsuk's voice sliced through the night air like a razor. I jolted, startled to realize he had followed me out, that he was standing right behind me. His presence was an overwhelming force, instantly filling the space, sharp and suffocating. He took one deliberate step forward, and the beta stumbled back as if struck by an invisible blow, the sheer force of the alpha's phenomenal dominance hitting him like a physical wall. Alpha Sunsuk, the beta stammered, his face pale and slick with sweat. I didn't know he was yours. He is mine, Sunsuk said, his tone devoid of all emotion, flat and deadly. As he spoke, his arms snaked around my waist, pulling me back flush against his hard body before I could even think to react. His scent, thick and dominating, wrapped around me like a protective shroud, so potent that the beta gagged and quickly lowered his eyes in submission. The words "he is mine" echoed in the hollow chambers of my heart, louder than its frantic beating. I hated it, and God help me, I needed it. The beta offered a quick, clumsy bow, muttered a string of incoherent apologies, and then practically vanished into the darkness. Only when he was gone did Sunsuk turn me in his arms. His hand gripped my chin, firm but not painful, tilting my face upwards until I had no choice but to meet his blazing eyes. "Who is he?" he asked, his voice dangerously calm. My lips trembled. "No one." His eyes narrowed. "Do not lie to me." I said he was no one. I snapped, the words bursting out of me in a torrent of pain and rage. My chest heaved. My hands shook uncontrollably. And yet, I made no move to pull away from his grip. "Why do you care? Why do you keep—" The rest of the sentence was swallowed whole. "Because he kissed me." His lips crashed against mine, fierce and hot, a tempest of unspoken emotions. My eyes widened in shock, my body stiffening for a half second before the heat. The overwhelming, undeniable heat spread through me faster than a wildfire. His hand moved to cradle the back of my neck, his grip firm, inescapable. The taste of him was intoxicating, a heady mix of power and something uniquely his alpha scent flooding my senses with every ragged breath. I should have pushed him away. I should have screamed. But instead, my fingers curled into the front of his shirt, clutching the expensive fabric desperately, as if it were the only solid thing in my spinning, chaotic world. When he finally, reluctantly, pulled back, my lips were tingling and swollen, my breath coming in ragged, shallow gasps. "Do not test me," he murmured, his forehead pressing against mine. "You are mine, Jangwook. I will kill anyone who dares to touch you." My chest tightened with a painful ache. This wasn't supposed to feel like this. It wasn't supposed to feel safe. And yet, when Minhee came running out of the house just then, waving his stuffed wolf and shouting, "Mommy, Daddy, come inside," I didn't move away from Sunsuk's protective embrace. Couldn't. Later that night, when I finally summoned the courage to leave, his parting words chased me all the way down the dark, winding road. "You can run," he had whispered against my ear, his voice sending a wave of shivers through me. "But you will never escape. Omegas like you don't escape alphas like me." And though I hated him for it, a small, treacherous part of me knew he was right. I had been caught, and I wasn't entirely sure I wanted to be free.